You're with ABC News. It's 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 6 a.m. in the West. Leading our bulletin this hour, trillions of dollars wiped from US markets in the wake of Donald Trump's tariffs. It's the worst day of trading since the early months of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, triggering new recession warnings. Despite the huge losses and criticism from world leaders, the US president is undeterred, proclaiming markets are, quote, going to boom. That's our top story today. Also ahead, campaigns collide. Both the Prime Minister and the opposition leader are targeting Western Sydney today as they try to turn attention back to domestic issues after a day dominated by the new US tariffs. The PM is due to speak shortly. We'll bring you that live when he gets underway. We're also live to Melbourne, where there's been a major security breach at the MCG. Two men have been charged with bringing firearms into a packed AFL match between Carlton and Collingwood. All the details coming up with our reporter soon. Overseas, Hungary has withdrawn from the International Criminal Court. The announcement coincides with a state visit by Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu, who's under an ICC arrest warrant. And we're live to outback Queensland, where floodwaters are starting to recede and hundreds of volunteers are mobilising to help with the clean-up. It's Friday the 4th of April. I'm Dan Borscher from the lands of the Darug people here in Parramatta in Western Sydney. This is ABC News Mornings. Donald Trump's vast array of tariffs are causing chaos on international markets, with US stocks plunging overnight. European markets were down across the board on Thursday. Wall Street has just posted its largest one-day percentage loss in years. The US president's sweeping tariff action on foreign imports triggered mass sell-offs across Asia as well, where trading partners were hit with some of the highest duty rises. The Australian share market is set to follow Wall Street's lead and could open down 3% following yesterday's loss of almost 1%. The Trump administration is defending the new tariff regime, saying initial market losses were expected.
There may be a short time of uncertainty, but for the long haul, as we restructure the American economy and the government, American economy and our private sector, with the government playing a role in that, President Trump's vision of using tariffs. Again, I'm not surprised there's some complaining, but at the end of the day, this president committed to putting Americans first.
We'll get some analysis on what it all means in just a moment. But first to our North America correspondent, Lauren Day, who's staying across breaking news and breaking developments out of the US. Lauren, how's it all playing out over there?
Well, Dan, it's been an absolutely chaotic day on the markets over here. Stocks have just tumbled on the back of so-called Liberation Day. It's been the single worst day for US markets since the beginning of the COVID pandemic. Back in 2020, we've seen a total of $3.1 trillion wiped off the share market. To break it down, the S&P 500 fell by 4.8%, the Dow Jones by almost 4%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq down almost 6%. And that's because stocks like Apple, Google, Nvidia, Amazon all had heavy losses, as did some retailers like Nike, Target and Ralph Lauren, which all have major production hubs in Southeast Asia and China, which of course were subject to some very harsh tariffs in yesterday's announcement. Now, a lot of people are watching this in absolute shock, not least because so many people's retirement savings here are tied to the share market. Their pension funds, their 401ks are invested in stocks and bonds. So this kind of volatility has real-world consequences for how much they can expect to retire with and when they might actually be able to retire. So even though the Trump administration is trying to reassure consumers, tell them to have patience, I think when people start seeing prices rise or they lose their jobs or their retirement savings are impacted, that's when their patience begins to wane. Now, Donald Trump spoke a short time ago on Air Force One, trying to reassure businesses and consumers that this was just a temporary blip and that everything was going to be fine. Here's what he had to say.
I think our markets are going to boom. We've got to give it a little chance, but we're taking in jobs and we're taking in industry our markets are going to boom.
Now, Donald Trump has also said that he would unveil additional tariffs both on semiconductors and pharmaceutical imports as well. Now, they were exempted in yesterday's announcements, but it was widely expected that they may be subject to future tariffs. He's now confirmed that. And that has major implications for Australia, of course, because pharmaceuticals are one of our major exports to the United States, particularly in the form of blood products and vaccines. So Australian political leaders have already responded to the tariffs yesterday, but surely they will be anxiously awaiting these future tariffs that are likely to be levelled against pharmaceuticals in the near future.
Lauren Day, North America correspondent, reporting from Washington, D.C. Back home, and Anthony Albanese has taken his campaign here to Western Sydney in the once safe Labor seat of Fowler. Meanwhile, the Trade Minister says he hasn't given up hope of a deal with the US to avoid new tariffs. Political reporter Tom Lowry is on the campaign trail and joins us now from a very busy school there, Tom. And clearly, the Prime Minister drawing a crowd behind you.
Yeah, Dan, we're at Cabramatta Public School in Western Sydney. You should be able to see behind me the Prime Minister getting the sort of hero's welcome that really any politician gets when they bring a bit of energy to a primary school like this. Fowler is actually quite a critical seat for Labor. This is pretty pivotal in this election. Labor lost this seat 3 years ago to an independent, trying to rebuild its brand in this part of Western Sydney. I think might be heading off to a visit to a classroom now, but it's been, quite the reception, certainly. As I mentioned before, Fowler is absolutely vital for Labor. They lost this seat to the independent Di Lee 3 years ago. They're running a new candidate this time around. Last time it was Christina Keneally, who wasn't from this part of the world. Lee is Labor's candidate this time, hoping to regain this seat to make the inroads it needs to in Western Sydney. The Liberals are certainly chasing plenty of other seats around Western Sydney as well, so trying to regain Fowler could be an important buffer for Labor as it tries to hang on to government.
And in fact, Tom, we spoke to Lee, the Labor candidate here on Mornings yesterday, who said trust and rebuilding it has been a big effort, and we're hoping to speak to the independent Di Lee next week or in the coming days before the election. The Liberals are not running anyone, we understand here. Meanwhile, Tom, this all comes while Trade Minister Don Farrell says there's still room to talk tariffs with the Trump administration.
Yeah, Dan, tariffs, of course, has been a really big theme throughout this campaign, and it sort of peaked yesterday as Donald Trump announced that sweeping 10% tariff on all imports from Australia into the United States. The Prime Minister had some fairly strong words when he responded to that announcement yesterday, saying this wasn't the action of a friend and making clear that Australia would be looking for new export markets in places like Southeast Asia in particular, trying to develop those trading relationships. But Don Farrell was speaking this morning and said he hasn't given up hope as yet in terms of talks with the Americans, saying there is still a possibility there to try and have these new tariffs reviewed or even taken off altogether. That being said, he did make plenty of criticisms of the trade announcement from the US as well, pointing out that tariffs on places like the McDonald and Heard Islands, which are uninhabited, don't seem to make any sense and perhaps indicate this whole process has been somewhat rushed. So strong language still from Labor about these tariffs, that they're entirely unwarranted and unjustified, but not giving up hope of talking to the Americans to try and have these reviewed. The election campaign, Dan, rolls on, of course, today. Anthony Albanese staying in Western Sydney, addressing a forum later on this morning on the future of Western Sydney. So Labor trying to make that pitch to this part of the world to, to continue their trust in Labor. There are plenty of safe Labor seats out here. As I mentioned, the Liberals do want to make inroads. They want to regain this seat of Fowler. So the Prime Minister making his pitch to Western Sydney a bit later on today.
Tom Lowry there reporting from the Prime Minister's election campaign in Western Sydney. Let's go to the other side of the campaign now. Isabel Rowe, who's travelling with the Dutton camp. Isabel, where are you this morning?
We're in a petrol station, which is the first time Peter Dutton has come to one of these, and it is a very important thing for him to do because, of course, his major cost of living policy is cutting the fuel excise, halving it, saying that basically he'll cut it to 25% and that on average someone will pay about $14 less per week if they fill up their car weekly. So we're in the electorate of Parramatta in Western Sydney. It is a marginal electorate. This is Andrew Charlton's seat, the Labor member. And this is an area, of course, that the Coalition would really like to pick up. Western Sydney, as we've heard so many times, and just from Tom there as well, is really important. So Peter Dutton's arrival is imminent here. He's got his local candidate for Parramatta, Katie Mullins, with him, and he'll be talking up this cost of living policy and comparing it to what the government is offering in terms of its tax cut. So Peter Dutton is trying to say that his policy is more savings for people per week and also less of a cost to the budget overall as well.
Isabel Rowe reporting from the Peter Dutton campaign in Parramatta, not far from where we're broadcasting this morning.